everyone. My name is Dr. David Litwa, and today I am presenting on my book, Posthuman Transformation in Ancient Mediterranean Thought. This particular book was published by Cambridge University Press in 2021. It has 8 chapters plus an introduction and conclusion. And as in my Jesus Deus series, I want to give a teaser introduction to each chapter. And today I'll be looking at the introduction, which defines my terms, what I mean by becoming an angel and becoming a daimon, which is different than a demon. And I talk a little bit about pop culture. I talk a little bit about why not this is something like heroification or deification. And I give a roadmap to the chapters that come afterward, I should say. And I really appreciate your interest, and I hope you will leave a like and a comment. So one of the important things for me in this book is that angelification is not the same thing as angelomorphism. Angelomorphism is a category that has been used by scholars to describe a widespread phenomenon in ancient Jewish and Christian literature, and that is that people, human beings, very often appear with the nature and the quality of angels, and I should say the features and the traits of angels, and that this says something theologically and anthropomorphically. I mean, it tells us about the perception of human nature and destiny, our higher self, as it were. But it's not the same thing as saying that a person is an angel or becomes an angel. And so there's a lot of people who become angelic and who are angelic, as Joseph is in Joseph and Asenath, and as the saints become like the angels in the 10th heaven, according to the ascension of Isaiah. These are widespread tropes, but they're not really what I'm interested in, which is the imagined reality of people entering into a higher species, an angelic species, entering into a different rank of being, an ontological transformation leading to not just a different mode of life, but to a new gene sequence. It is gene therapy on steroids, full transfiguration. And yet, since, as it were, speaking metaphorically, the angelic and human genome overlap to some degree, we don't look utterly different when we transform into angels. There are also cases in antiquity of people being married to angels, as in Valentinian soteriology, where part of entering into the fullness involves marriage with our divine double or angelic twin, as it were. I don't think that's exactly the same as angelification, although one might argue that it implies angelification. There's a lot of talk in Qumran about entering into the lot of the holy ones standing in for angels, joining angels in worship, joining angels in celebration, joining angels in ritual, joining angels actually ascending to heaven and joining the hymns of the angels. All of this is in the mix. And there are people who are trying to live an angelic life on earth by not eating or by only eating certain things, or by limiting the diet or by changing the diet. All of this is not quite yet becoming an angel, which takes something. I mean, it takes moral effort. Your morality is connected to your ontology, but there's always something more. Becoming angel involves something more than being angelic, and it's that more that I wanted to study in this book. So I've got to be quite clear about what I mean by angels. Angels are generally considered to be mediating beings. Angelos in Greek means a messenger, and angels are simply superhuman messengers. But it's not quite as simple as that. As always, there are complexities and folds, are angels gods? Are they something else? Are they do you have an intermediate zone as well as an intermediate grade of being? Or are angels types of divine beings just lower down on the scale? And these two separate ways of conceiving of angels are concurrent in the ancient world, and they might even be concurrent in the modern world. They sort of overlap. So I would say in Orthodox Christianity, there's a strong attempt to draw a line between a high God figure, who is supposedly a creator, and the creation. So on this model, daimones and angels are in the same sort of, or grouped together with humans as creations, although they are still higher on the gradient. And then there's this absolute iron ceiling above which is the unknown God. But in another model, which is something that Christians also held in antiquity, I believe, daimones and angels were, or angels, I should say, just angels were considered lower gods. At Qumran, angels are called Elohim or Elim, which just means gods. I take them at their word. I don't think that that's simply a metaphor. Gods and angels are somewhere betwixt and between the high God, where all the power is centralized, and mortal humans, but they're definitely on the divine side of the line. So these are the two competing models, and I'm not saying that there's any kind of trajectory or progression, but I will say that for lack of a better term, the Orthodox Christian model, with a very strong division between creator and creature, is not really something that we see very often until we get to the 4th century CE, with the imperial theologians really emphasizing this point. I would say the dominant model for both Christians and others in the Mediterranean world is to view angels as types of lower deities which can be prayed to, they can be worshipped, they can be asked questions, they can intercede with the high God, they can provide favors, they act like gods or modern saints, but they don't have power, and so all their power is mediated from a higher entity. So keeping that in mind, someone in the ancient world could still say, I only worship one God, but of course I worship these other lesser beings, or I worship that ultimate God through these lesser beings who are part of the God's entourage, as it were, or his management. I should say his or her management, since the primal God is unknown and sometimes beyond gender, but you understand what I mean. So if we look at some examples of angelified figures, they would include people like Enoch, Moses, Moroni in Mormon tradition, and possibly Jesus. Enoch is probably the greatest example. He is said to walk with angels, and then in First Enoch, apparently becomes one in chapters 70 and 71. It's debated, of course, what exactly is happening, but Enoch apparently becomes one, or realizes his secret identity with the son of the human, who does receive worship and is an angelic messianic figure. I argue in the book that Moses is also an angelified figure in some Jewish traditions, and specifically I look at Philo. We'll talk about that later. Moroni in Mormon tradition used to be a human before becoming an angel, and of course plays a role in the discovery of the gold tablets. And then Jesus, some would say that the first model of Jesus' deification is in fact his angelification, that early Christians viewed him after his death as an angel, and then this angel sort of became more and more and more important until he became sort of Lord of the Angels, Master of the Angels, Creator of the Angels. This position later became known as Arian in the 4th century because it was supported by an Alexandrian presbyter called Arius. But at some point, or maybe at several points along the timeline, Christians began insisting that Jesus was even greater than angels. And we see this in the book of Hebrews and many other places. But that doesn't mean that, where they ended up or determined, how they got there. And yeah, there are various theories, again, about how early Christians came to view Jesus as a divine being, and I cover some of those theories in my book, Jesus Deus. You can go check that out and the video series I have on that. But this is just to illustrate that there are figures in ancient Jewish and Christian tradition that really were angelified, not just given a pair of wings and a nice white robe. They were actually made into angels. It's also worth noting that in modern societies, it's often said that the dead become angelic, and in some cases outright angels. And this is something that I've personally seen and experienced and supported in funerals when extremely well-loved and righteous people die. They are often spoken of as angels. I've had the experience of knowing a family who had a daughter die in infancy, and then that daughter was called Little Angel. I myself refer to my deceased mother to my children as Grandma Angel. There is a study on this, which I cite by Tony Walter, called The Dead Who Become Angels, Bereavement and Vernacular Religion. And I think, actually, when you read this article and you poke around in the literature, it's where, hopefully you don't have the experience of going to too many funerals, but if you have, you get to see that this is actually fairly widespread, where dead people are said to become angels. Jane Goody, British celebrity, is another example of this. And according to Nancy Gibbs, who wrote an article in Time magazine in 1993, 15% of people who believe in angels viewed them as spirits of the people who have died. And so they are essentially benevolent ghosts. And that is a live option in modern popular religion worldwide. And of course, there's the phenomenon of angelification in popular culture. There are many mutants in the X-Men series, but one of them is the figure called Angel. And he has appeared on the silver screen several times, but most people know him from the comic books. He quite literally grows a pair of angelic wings and has a series of journeys and transformations. If any of you remember the old film It's a Wonderful Life, we have Clarence Oddbody, who was a former human, coming and visiting the main hero, who feels kind of down and out and needs a lot of encouragement. And there you have a great instance of, good people becoming angels. It's a bit more controversial, but I like to cite this OA, which is a series on Netflix, which I've enjoyed. And this OA stands for Original Angel and depicts an angelic figure as the main character, a strong female lead who realizes her angelic identity. What exactly that means is up for grabs. It's quite a modern kind of sci-fi blast. And like many episodes, or like many series on Netflix, they ended it too soon. Left us hanging. Not happy about that, but bring it back, and I will watch it. Anyway, This is just goes to show this is, not everywhere, but this is something that is still with us in modern pop culture. So pretty much everybody in Western culture, at least, probably worldwide, has a general idea of an angel. They appear everywhere, especially around Christmas time, annoyingly. But then the question is, what is a daimon? And it's very important to keep that pronunciation daimon, because some people might slide into the pronunciation of demon. But a demon is definitely not the same thing as a daimon. Demons, with their pitchforks and horns, look more like satyrs in Greco-Roman mythology. And the daimon really isn't an evil character at all. A daimon, plural daimones, can be mischievous and they can hurt people, but in general, they aren't mean. And it's important to realize that. I think probably Apuleius, who is a fantastic thinker, and highly recommend you read anything you can from Apuleius. Very funny guy, second century philosopher and novelist. He wrote basically a handbook on Platonism, in which he said that daimonos they're rational in nature, emotive in disposition, aerial in body, and eternal in time. And it's the latter two dispositions that they share, or that makes them better than human beings. So they don't die, and their bodies are made of air, or something that to the ancients looked like air. So they are translucent. They can pass through walls. They can fly. In that respect, they're like angels. But in the respect of being rational and emotive, they are like humans. So they have essentially, a frontal cortex without a frontal cortex. They can think, and they can also feel. And it's as in the case with humans, it's often their feelings that get them into trouble. And daimones, they were a known quantity in the ancient world. In fact, ancients outside of the Jewish and Christian tradition tended to speak much more of daimones than they did about angels. But of course, people in late antiquity, and especially after Christianity, they knew both daimones and angeli, daimones and angels, and they variously rank them. And it's true that the Christians tended to prefer to talk about angels, and that in general, speaking generally, they viewed daimones as evil, and increasingly, I should say, so that certainly by the medieval period, daimones have fully transformed into demons. But in late antiquity, that transformation had not yet taken place, at least not fully. And Christians always needed to use adjectives like wicked daimones, etc., or evil daimones. And the reality is, daimones as superhuman beings and angels are basically twin concepts, sister concepts. And what I got interested in, or one of the things that interested me, was what if I compare these two, not just these two similar types of being, but people turning into those types of being, and to seeing if in the process of comparing that analogous transformation, I could produce any light. And I will let my readers judge as to whether I have been successful, or at least interesting. So I won't bore you with any kind of lengthy roadmap, but basically throughout the book, I compare daimonified persons with angelified persons. Sorry for the somewhat jargony word daimonified and angelified. There's not really a great non-cumbersome equivalent to that. But for the people who become daimones, I study Hesiod's Golden Generation, the figure of Empedocles, very, very fun philosopher, Plato and Platonists, and specifically Platonist theories about how regular human beings who pursue a moral life and certain occupations can turn into daimones, and Plotinus's modification of those theories. And then on the angelified side, I look at Philo's Moses. I add in here Luke's Christians. I have that as a separate article, but I want to add that to the series here. I also look at Christians according to Origen and Zostrianus, who is supposedly grandfather of Zoroaster and main hero of the Nag Hammadi tractate named after him. A tractate that I consider to be Christian, and I invite everybody to check out my video on Zostrianus on the Patreon, as well as there's a free video on YouTube as well. And so this is the sequence that I'll be going through. As I go through this series, I'll be delving into how these people all get transformed in the great wild imagination of Mediterranean peoples, including Christians and Jews. For now, I just want to thank everybody and really express my appreciation for you coming along. I hope if you liked this video, you will say so by giving it a thumbs up and leaving a comment and subscribing to my channel. And I really appreciate everybody's support, and I wish you well as I lay out these videos in this new series. Till we meet again, take care.